All this land belonged to the Indians before the Spaniards came. They came to the prairie, searching for gold, demanding what did not exist. When Chief Vitachuko explained there was none, DeSoto put irons on his wrists. Then Chief Vitachuko had a great feast. He told tales across the campfire about the vast riches beyond the Swanee. Told the Spaniards to search over there. Then the Indian knives met the big Spanish swords and were broken in the battle that night. Chief Vitachuko slashed DeSoto's face, but he lost his own life in the fight. When DeSoto recovered, his rage was still high. He said, "Bring all those Indians to me." Then he slaughtered 1,200, laughed as they died. Then he marched on across the Swanee. Waited, then they came back again to the prairie, and they hoped to remain. But the white men still wanted that lush prairie land. They fought the new leader, King Payne. Colonel Dan Noonan brought troops to a lake. King Payne brought his warriors there too. He routed the soldiers, but he lost his own life, as Indians usually do. For the soldiers came back as they always return, drove the Indians off of their land, fired 400 villages, watched them all burn. Ended the struggle, Vitachuko began. Now there are no more Indians in North Florida. There's no more land for the white man to take. There's only a prairie named for King Payne and for Colonel Dan Noonan, a lake. Now 400 years have gone by since that night. Vitachuko slashed DeSoto's face. Now white men are living on King Payne's prairie. They're sailboating on Dan Noonan's lake. I'd like to introduce the rest of the group here in a moment. Tim DeMass on the stand-up bass, and on the harmonica, Mr. Will McLean, the Dean of Florida Songwriters. I was born and raised up in the hills of North Carolina, and a while back I got a telephone call from a land developer. Said they had opened up some more quarter-acre home sites on top of another mountain, and I could get in on that deal if I wanted to. I told him what he could do with his project. I didn't buy any land, but I wrote this song. I got a long-distance call from Carolina. Said there's big things happening in the hills. There's developing old Lookout Mountain, just so I can get away from city hills. Wouldn't I like to invest in the future? Wouldn't I really like to settle down in a rustic cottage in the mountains, far from the confusions of a town? Well, they are selling quarter-acre home sites, nothing down, no payment for a year. If I want the deluxe plan, I just send them 15 grand, then I can be a full-fledged mountaineer. And I says, get your greedy hands off of my mountains, go back to Miami or to hell, 'cause you're screwing up the hills of Carolina, the ones that I have known and loved so well. He says, does that mean you don't want in the project? Could you recommend uncles or some aunts? I says, if I could have it done, my friend, I'd call the Pentagon, have them drop an A-bomb in your pants, and then you'd never be able to have children. You'd be impotent and sterile. And if I could, I would, I'd get rid of you for good, but the punishment would be just too mild. He says, now wouldn't you like to think it over? Then perhaps you'd sign on the dotted line. Then he had the gall to ask me to pay for the call while he rapes the hills of Caroline. I says, get your greedy hands off of my mountains, go back to the animal shelter you came from, 'cause you're making of the hills of Carolina what the hills of California have become. He says, now wouldn't you like to think it over? Then perhaps you'd sign on the dotted line. Then he had the gall to ask me to pay for the call while he rapes the hills of Caroline, while he rapes the hills of Caroline. I was born and raised right near the Cherokee Reservation up in North Carolina. And a lot of people ask me, why are there still Indians in North Carolina? And I explained that some of them did not want to go to Oklahoma. They hid out in the woods. So they finally reached a deal where those who wanted to stay and had the gall to stay, the courage to hold out, could. So there is still a reservation up in Carolina. But I wrote this song about the man who made it all possible, Tsali. Tsali died for me many years ago, and I'd rather be in Cherokee than any place I know. And while I'm in this world, no matter where I roam, I'll always be going back to my Cherokee mountain home. In 1838, the Trail of Tears began. They'd moved the Cherokee to Oklahoma, every woman and every man. But Tsali wouldn't go, he vowed that he would stay. And when the soldiers came for him, he blew their lives away. But the soldiers promised him, if he'd pay for what he'd done, they'd move who they could to Oklahoma and leave the rest alone. So Tsali and his sons stood in front of the soldiers' guns and gave their lives that day so the rest of them could stay. And while I'm in this world, no matter where I roam, I'll always be going back to my Cherokee mountain home. 'Cause Tsali died for me many years ago, and I'd rather be in Cherokee than any place I know. Yes, while I'm in this world, no matter where I roam, I'll always be going back to my Cherokee Mountain home. 'Cause Tsali died for me many years ago, and I'd rather be in Cherokee than any place I know.